Today what I'm going to cover is practices that you'll always be able to do. So for somebody who's just starting off, these practices are really useful. And they're also really useful for everybody, even if you've got a regular meditation practice. The reason being that at some point or another, life's going to come along and wipe out all the time you have to meditate in. And it doesn't matter who you are or how committed you believe yourself to be, it's just going to get in the way. And then what do? Well, one way to look at it is when things get really difficult is you stop and then come back to it, but notice how difficult that is. In this session, what I'm going to do is explain two things. So if you give up and try to come back to it, it's tricky. It's better to keep up some sort of a practice than it is to have to rebuild it from scratch. The practices I'm going to teach are not typical meditation practices. Just to give you an example of what I would say is a typical mindfulness meditation practice. This is the famous following the breath, where you're sitting and noticing your breath, rising and falling. And your mind wanders and you bring your attention back to your breath and you repeat that process. That's an example of a typical mindfulness meditation. When you're a newcomer to meditation and when you are coming back to it, or when you are having a difficult time, your mind will very simply get very busy. It's very difficult to maintain a practice like following the breath because the amount of time that you have to commit to it and the fact that it can feel frustrating. It takes many years to recognize and learn intuitively so that you respond to it rather than knowing it, that the busyness of the mind is fine and the fact that your mind might wander is fine as well. None of that actually matters. It's actually part of the process. The meditations are designed for your mind to wander because what we're doing is retraining ourselves to notice that our mind's wandered. That's the key element of mindfulness meditation training. We're training ourselves to notice that our mind's wandered. So when we're going through the day, we're on autopilot, we go, here I am. And then you have the choice of about how to use the mind. So it's not mind wandering is bad and being mindful or present is good. It's that if your mind is wandering, by definition, you don't have the choice. Your mind has taken you to that place. And very often it's a place you don't particularly want to go to. And when life gets difficult, it's almost invariably a place you don't particularly want to go to. By training yourself to notice that that's happening, you then have the choice, do I allow my mind to go down this repetitive road yet again, or do I want to refocus on something else? That's the way that mindfulness meditation works. But as I said, it works on the basis of repeating that process, and that can be an uncomfortable process. The meditations that I'm going to teach you today as the underlying fallback, basic, build a habit with it style meditations are breathing and relaxation. I'll teach you a relaxation meditation and I'll teach you a breathing meditation. And these are also practices that are really useful for a number of other key areas. One of them is particularly helpful for getting you off to sleep. And the other one is particularly helpful at reducing your level of anxiety and stress. That's the state in which most people begin to learn meditating because our culture has the narrative that meditation is a stress management practice. Therefore, if you're stressed, you learn to meditate. People come along and generally they're stressed. It does help to reduce your stress, but really that's a side effect, it's a byproduct. However, these practices, the ones that I'm going to teach you today, they work directly on your physical stress. Stress is a physical thing. It's how your body's responding to something that you perceive to be a threat. So not all stress is about threats, but almost all threats generate stress. There are the two key areas that we can use to intervene in that. One's breathing and one's relaxation. I'll teach you the relaxation technique first. Now, the names of these are confusing. I need to ensure that you separate them in your head. One's a relaxation exercise. It's called the 4-10s meditation. It's 4 sets of 10 relaxing out breaths. We relax the eyes for 10 out breaths. Then we relax the jaw for 10 out breaths. Then we relax the shoulders. Then we relax the hands. It takes 4 minutes. There aren't many people that can't squeeze that in. And if you get to the end of the day and you haven't done it, you do it when you're in bed. Because relaxation is a really useful aid to sleep. As well as that, because we're counting the breaths in our head, it gives the mind something to do. It's a distraction. Using the inner voice is a meditation practice known as mantra meditation. By rights, it's a mantra meditation because you're counting the breaths with your inner voice. So that's the 4-10s. You're counting 4 sets of 10 breaths. Put that to one side. The other meditation is the 4-6 breaths. 4-6 breaths is where we breathe in for 4 seconds and we breathe out for 6. And that's an example of a pranayama meditation technique. These are ancient, they're yogic meditation techniques. They fundamentally change your physiology. The 4-10s meditation is a relaxation technique. The 4-6 breaths is a breathing technique. Probably the best thing to do is to explain the 4-10s meditation from the floor up, and then we'll practice it. We're focusing on these 4 areas: the eyes, the jaw, the shoulders, and the hands. That's where most of the physical stress resides in the body as tension. Yeah. So if you want to see if somebody's stressed, if you know somebody well, look at them and you'll see the stress on their face. You're noticing their furrowed brow, they might be gritting their teeth. Everybody responds differently. There could be squinting, there could be frowning, and you know that something's not right. If they're not somebody that's stressed out a lot, then you'll see it on their face. That's there for 2 reasons. One is it's a signal. Facial expressions are a signal. We smile so that other people can see we're happy. We cry so that other people can see we're sad. Our brow becomes furrowed so that people can see that we're concerned. Jaw tightens when we're angry. You could look at a lot of faces exhibiting those responses and you'd be able to identify what the emotions were. Most of us could anyway. It's a signal. The other thing is it's a defense. What happens is this. We are designed to live in nature with a small group of 30 people. Instead, we're living in an entirely artificial world with 8 million. And you're designed to survive in the jungle. If you've ever wondered why you get these inner conflicts, the mind wants something and the emotions want another thing, so on, it's because you're designed to live in the jungle and survive in the jungle, and everything's about surviving in nature with danger all around you. You've got this thing called the stress response, and it keeps you alive for a few moments longer if you're being attacked. It might cause you to survive, and that's why we have it. Because those ancestors that exhibited this response when they were under attack survived, and the ones that didn't. And what we're protecting ourselves from is an attack by either a predator or a hostile competitor. What we're doing is protecting the vital areas in the body. We have to be able to see to survive. So what happens is you lean your head down, and that reduces the amount of the eyes that can be touched or stabbed or hurt or bitten. We're frowning also to protect the eyes. We're squinting. All of that is reducing the area of the eyes that's available for attack. We're gritting our teeth to bite because this is the only weapon that we have. Another reason that the head's down is because we're protecting our neck, which is a vulnerable area. An animal will quite possibly go for our neck. We're leaning forward to absorb the impact. If we're just standing straight up, it's easy to push somebody over. If they're leaning forward, it's more difficult. And the hands are held in front, made into fists to protect the fingers, which are vulnerable, to maintain tension around about the chest, and you're protecting your heart, your lungs. If you imagine somebody being attacked by a lion, for example, if they stand openly, it's all over. If they lean down, then they might survive a second or two longer. And then their comrades are there with spears to kill the lion, they survive. We're their children. And that's become deeply embedded in our physiology. These are the areas where the stress resides in. Basically, when you hear your bank balance is rubbish, or somebody's rejected you, or you've got a difficult neighbour says something, and all of these kind of things, or somebody in your family, you respond with a threat response, and all of these parts of the body tighten up. As well as that, the stress response includes higher blood pressure, heart beats faster, more skin conductivity, we sweat because we're preparing ourselves to run away, attack, or run up a tree.